Today is Tuesday, January 18, and at 9:30 this morning, the Montreal Canadiens named their 18th general manager. He is Kent Hughes. This guy, what a beauty, huh? What a beauty. So I think by now, with more and more information filtering out, a lot of people know a lot more about Kent Hughes now than they did yesterday or a week ago. But in case you've missed it, I've been on planet Mars all this time and are just coming back down to Earth. He has a hockey background of about 30 years. He's a former Montrealer from Beaconsfield on the West Island, went to Middlebury College in Vermont, played hockey there, and then made his way to Boston, where he's been living there for about 30 years. He has a background in hockey that is about 30 years, and he's been an agent for over 20 years. First client he represented was Vincent Lecavalier back in 1999, if memory serves me well. So there's a wealth of experience here as an agent with most recently Quartex Management. And so I love this hiring an agent to be the GM of the Montreal Canadiens. Now, there are some agents like Pierre Lacroix back in the day who had success and won a couple of Stanley Cups with the Colorado Avalanche. And there are other agents like Michael Barnett who never did. And there are other agents in the game today, like Bill Zito, for example, and Chuck Fletcher, former agents who became general managers. I like this hiring for a lot of reasons. And by the way, I'm not surprised. We've talked about it here on the Sick Podcast. When Jeff Gordon said to think outside the box, and when he brought up the word agent twice, it had us all thinking, who could be an agent? And then we found out about the connection between Jeff Gordon and Kent Hughes. Both from Massachusetts. Both had a chance to meet there. Both had a chance to talk there. Kent Hughes represented Patrice Bergeron. Bergeron with the Boston Bruins. He was there when Jeff Gordon was assistant general manager of the Boston Bruins. Gordon was their assistant GM for 6 years. He had dealings with Kent Hughes. When Gordon left Boston to go to the New York Rangers, he wanted to bring Kent Hughes with him, which Kent Hughes at the time declined the invite. A couple of years later, Jeff Gordon, as GM of the New York Rangers, makes a trade to acquire a pick in the 7th round and ends up selecting Kent Hughes' son, Riley, in the draft. So anyway, why do I love this signing? Well, first of all, we're talking about someone here with a law degree. Very, very intelligent. Second of all, we're talking about somebody that Jeff Gordon wanted. And I think that's very important because it's Jeff Gordon that you would think had the final say. I'm not saying that he didn't impress Michael Landauer, Bob Gainey, and Jeff Molson. Of course he did. But in the end, Gordon got who he wanted. The only thing is we weren't sure if Kent Hughes was going to take the job because he's a very successful agent, has over 20 NHL players under contract. You would think it would probably be a pay cut. Why take it with all the pressure and the stress and everything that is Montreal, not to mention that he has to move, probably even have his family, his wife follow him to Montreal. He's got to advise all his clients, all that stuff. But on Monday, there was a report that the Canadiens were going to announce their general manager during the game. That announcement never happened. And when it didn't, it said to me more and more that it was a matter of time, that there was a deadline for Kent Hughes to give an answer, or they were waiting on Kent Hughes' answer because he probably had to advise all his clients, contact them and or their families, or was fielding calls from them. He had to talk to Quartex Management, see if he would make the move, who would take care of the files, and whether it would be to one person or to a team. He had to negotiate his contract. He probably wanted longevity on the contract, you would think. You're not going to leave what you're doing unless you have some longevity, some term, and a guarantee there in terms of salary. So they negotiated through late in the night, and it was announced on early Tuesday morning. Think about this for a second. Some of the biggest drawbacks, setbacks the Canadiens have had, and that is the draft, according to some, more specifically, the drafting of Quebec-born players or drafting of players in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. Kent Hughes is players that are under contract. Bergeron, Letang, Beauvillier, Mikey Matheson, the list goes on and on. He knows how to talk to these players from Quebec. He knows how to identify talent from Quebec, whether it's in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League or it's a Quebecer playing elsewhere. So he has that covered. Another thing, the draft is coming up. The draft will be the Montreal Canadiens Stanley Cup. They are statistically the worst team in hockey. They will most likely have, let's just say, a top 3 pick when all is said and done. And let's hope they have the first pick when that draft takes place later on this summer in the month of July at the Bell Center in Montreal. That is their Stanley Cup this year. Last year they went to the final. This year their final will be the draft, the buzz, everything that's going to happen. It's an important draft. It's a good draft. We're hearing it's not a great draft. The number 1 pick right now is Shane Wright. He might not end up being the best player in the draft. Guess what? Kent Hughes' son, Jack, plays at Northeastern. He is a projected first-round pick. That means his father most likely has followed his son around since he was a kid to tournaments, to combines, to showcases, games, regular season, playoffs, all that stuff. That means he knows the draft class of 2003 born players, you would think, like the back of his hand. That makes me feel confident that it's going to be a pretty good draft. You would think that he's going to know the 2004s next year and even the 2005s after that. Plus, with all his contacts in the agency business and all of his former colleagues, he can pick up the phone, call some of them and say, hey, give me some extra information on this player. Tell me something on this player. Tell me something on that player. You would think that he has a great relationship with scouts, having been an agent, and he can do that with the scouts as well. This is quite a coup, I think, for the Canadiens. There were many good candidates, and a lot of people are saying that the whole interview process was a facade and this and that, and it wasn't real. I think it was real. I think it was very real. There's no doubt that this was Kent Hughes' job if he wanted it. We all know that, right? We know that. But what the Canadiens did by interviewing people was also pick people's brains. Some of them very intelligent people, and picking their brains, and maybe those people brought up a point or two and opened up Jeff Gordon's eyes or Jeff Molson's eyes saying, hey, you know what? That's not a bad idea. That's a pretty good strategy. It's a pretty good plan. Maybe we can try that. They'll run that by Kent Hughes, and it's something. So they pick people's brains, which is always good. It also gave a lot of people an opportunity to show what they're made of, to show what they can do, to talk about their plan. And it gave a lot of people a lot of experience. No doubt, no one's going to regret the process. It's an enriching experience for everyone. But also the Canadiens may have found another candidate or two that they can put within their organization in some department or give them some title. You would think in director of player personnel, director of amateur scouting, player development. The list goes on and on. So I think it was a great process. In the end, logic prevailed, and that Kent Hughes was chosen. The big question was whether or not he was going to accept the job. He did. I think you have to be pretty excited about that as well. Listen, here's someone who is extremely successful, that if he didn't spend foolishly and made a good investment or two, you would think, doesn't have to work another day in his life, but has chosen to be the general manager of the Montreal Canadiens, which is a huge challenge. And agents, let me tell you, agents, it's a very, very tough industry. They have that eye of the tiger. They are sharks. They are motivated. They are determined. They are people that thrive under pressure. And so this is going to make him a winner with the Montreal Canadiens. There's no doubt about it. Also, Guillaume Lefrançois, a colleague of mine, has thrown out Vincent Lecavalier's name as somebody that Kent Hughes wants to bring on board. Talk about adding to that credibility and having a former NHL star like Vincent Lecavalier possibly talk to players. And if Vincent doesn't come on board, I'm sure he's going to bring a very, very good team with him. But also think about this, another thing that has plagued the Canadiens, free agency. A lot of people say free agents don't want to come to Montreal. The tax situation, the political situation, the language situation, the highways, the roads, they're broken, they're this, they're that. There's traffic. There's language laws. There's education. There's different laws. You don't want to come. And add to that, Montreal, now they're not a very competitive team. They're arguably the worst team in hockey. Add to that, Quebec, curfews, restrictions, and all this stuff. And think about this. Kent Hughes, for over 20 years, has been a part of unrestricted free agency in the National Hockey League, representing clients that were unrestricted free agents, talked with a bunch of teams, talked with a bunch of GMs, talked with a bunch of coaches, talked with a bunch of executives, had a chance to visit certain cities. He knows more than anyone else what players want to hear, what their wives want to hear, what their families want to hear. He knows what works. He knows what doesn't work. He knows how to get to them. He knows what to do. He knows if they appreciate a tour of the city by helicopter, going out to a nice restaurant, being set up in a penthouse, or even the little things. And so I'm not telling you that the Canadiens all of a sudden are going to be able to attract unrestricted free agents, because all those other factors that we talked about are still present. But what I do know is they've never been more equipped to deal with some of these challenges than they are now, by having an agent with over 20 years experience who has represented some of the highest profile players in the entire National Hockey League. So think about this for a second. He played the game. He has a law degree. He's a former Montrealer. He's bilingual. He's been in hockey for 30 years. He's been an agent for over 20 years. He's represented some of the best players in hockey. He has experience in contract negotiation. He has an experience in identifying talent. He has colleagues and contacts who also can identify young talent and know the up-and-coming prospects. This is a slam dunk for the Montreal Canadiens. I feel like the city of Montreal and the Montreal Canadiens fan base finally has their team back. And he and Jeff Gordon, they get along, but he's not a yes man either. And he wasn't going to accept this position if he was going to be. Gordon will give him some power. Yes, they're going to work together. And yes, they're even going to challenge each other. And it's going to make for a great marriage. We got our team back. We got our team back. I was born in 1972. My first memory was Guy Lafleur tying the game up against the Boston Bruins with less than a minute and a half to go in the playoffs, in regulation, in Game 7. I saw the Canadiens win the Cup in 79. I saw the Canadiens win the Cup in 86. I saw the Canadiens win the Cup in 93. Some of you older than me had a chance to see the Canadiens win many more cups. Jeff Molson did what some might think is the unthinkable. He hired an Anglophone from the United States of America to be the executive vice president of hockey ops of the Montreal Canadiens. And he hired someone whose name is Hughes as the general manager of the Montreal Canadiens. And for some of you, a certain sector of the media and a certain sector of the fan base who are going to say, yeah, but he's been living in Boston for the last 20 years. What does he know about the Quebec culture and the Quebec people and the tradition and all this stuff? You know what my buddy Luc Gelina said to those people on Twitter earlier this morning? He said, a lot of you wanted Martin Brodeur. A lot of you wanted Daniel Brière. A lot of you wanted Luc Robitaille. A lot of you wanted so many other candidates. Roberto Luongo. Guess what? All these candidates, they've been living in the States for over 20 years as well. But you wanted them. Why don't you want Kent Hughes? And he is fully bilingual. He is my general manager. He is your general manager. Let's get behind this team. We got our team back again. It's Bleu Blanc Rouge. Kent Hughes, Jeff Gordon, and Jeff Molson will be available to the media on Wednesday, at which point we'll probably find out a little bit more about their plan. Until then, we say, Kent, good luck. All the best to you. Everything we hear is fantastic. And if you're half as good as what we hear, you're going to win a Stanley Cup here one day. We haven't had one since 1993. Good luck. All the best, my man. We got our team back. We got our team back. That's it for me. That's it for the Sick Podcast for today. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And you can watch us on YouTube and subscribe. It's absolutely free. I got to go now. I got to shovel the 10 feet of snow because my car is stuck and can't get out. Welcome back to Montreal, Kent. That's it for me, the Sick Podcast.